The morning started as usual. Steve went to work, but soon she received a call informing her that her husband had died in a car accident. Slippery roads, black ice, loss of control, and something else that now had no meaning. How could she believe it? Lena couldn't believe it for a long time. For several months, she lived as if he were still there. Waking up was especially difficult, realizing anew that he was gone and would never be back. But how could he be gone when they had so many plans? If they were supposed to live and live together. If his slippers were still under the hanger just as he left them, just come and put them on. But he won't come. And all his things could be thrown away or given to someone else. But she was afraid to touch those things. It seemed that if everything remained as it was when Steve was there, then... No, she hadn't gone crazy. It was just very hard to admit that her husband was no more and never would be. She would take one of his things, thinking of throwing it away or selling it. And then she would carefully put it back. What if he comes back? She would wonder, and what would I say to him? No, let it stay. Then her husband's things were placed in their spots to maintain this silly belief in the what-if, an illusion of that belief. It also happened because she was left all alone. Yes, they had lived almost 15 years and always together. Steve was an orphan, meaning he had no relatives. Lena's family had all died before she got married. They married out of great love and were very happy. There were no children, and they never really figured out why. The first 5 years, they lived as if they didn't notice their childlessness. Well, if there were no children, so be it. They were so happy together. Then Lena finally went to see doctors. Everything seemed normal. They said her husband needed to get checked. So, he did, and everything was fine. But still, no children. They hoped it would happen eventually. They continued to live as they were, hoping that someday. However, after celebrating their 15th anniversary, they suddenly realized. They understood that no, they wouldn't have children. They began to talk about the possibility of adoption. It wasn't any easier. Perhaps even more challenging than giving birth. There were plenty of debates between them, whether to adopt a boy or a girl, a baby or an older child. In short, they discussed many things. And they had already come to an agreement, made the necessary steps to adopt a child. The final steps were yet to be taken. And now she had to come to terms with the thought that she would never have anyone. Because an unmarried woman without children wouldn't be allowed to adopt anyone, with so many complete families dreaming of having children. And what was she now? Barren, surrounded by those who had all perished. Well, not just her husband, but no other relatives either. Well, she had nothing to try to replace those she couldn't save with this already unfortunate child. That is, no one told her that. Of course, Lena thought so herself. But honestly, she didn't want anything anymore. She was turning 40 soon, meaning most of her life was already lived. Well, what was left for her? Even if she managed to adopt a baby, could she raise it, make it happy? In her current state, it seemed impossible. She couldn't hold anything in her powerless hands. After Steve's death, life stood still. She went to work, came back home, but there was nothing else to do at home. And she didn't do anything, already understanding perfectly well that her husband was gone forever. But still, she decided to leave things as they were when he was around. One day, as if awakening, she looked at herself, at the apartment from the outside, and was horrified. If Steve saw what I turned myself and our apartment into, she thought. He was so tidy, so clean. And I let everything go, justifying myself by preserving his memory. Would he allow such a thing when he was around? What if he sees it? What if his soul is tormented by what I've become? Thinking like this, Lena suddenly felt alive. She began to tidy up the apartment, which had been filled with dust and neglected, as if no one had lived in it for the past 6 months. Well, actually, she hadn't lived in it. You see, she was a widow, a lonely woman with no one and nothing left. No, now everything needs to be brought back to its previous state. Make the home the way it was when her husband was there. The apartment was quite spacious, with 3 rooms, so there was a lot of work to be done. But Lena seemed not to feel tired. She was happy to see every corner come alive, filling with air and regaining its former look. Finally, she left the smallest room, which was Steve's office, for last. He used to work on his things there, sometimes spending the entire weekends. And if she felt bored alone in the apartment, she would also settle in the chair with her book. Oh, those were blissful evenings. Yes, it was painful to enter that room now, to look at the empty desk where he used to sit and at his now empty desk. She gave some papers to her husband's colleagues that might be useful to them. Now everything left seemed to be unnecessary to anyone. But still, cleaning was necessary. Let it be empty, but clean. Once they dreamed of converting this room into a nursery, but now it would probably always remain empty. Or I'll turn it into my little room, decided Lena, as if forgetting that the entire apartment now belonged to her. She began cleaning, eventually started going through the drawers of the desk, which had almost nothing left except a few bills rolled up into a tube. She took this stash of her husband's, smiled. So, Steve, like many men, hid some money from her. Well, now it's impossible to know what for. Maybe it was for a gift or for his own needs. Oh, what difference does it make now? It's impossible to find out. Lena removed the rubber band, spread out the money, sorted through them. And on one of the bills, she noticed a phone number. There was no doubt that it was Steve who wrote it. She knew her husband's handwriting. But why did he write it on the money, and what were those symbols next to it? It seemed like he never did that before. There was a notebook for notes, and anywhere else he could write. Maybe he borrowed money from someone and didn't have time to pay back? Although, none of his acquaintances mentioned that Steve owed them. But perhaps, out of delicacy, the amount wasn't that large. The truth could be found out only by one way, calling that number. But what would she say? Lena closed the desk drawers, went to her bedroom, only then realizing how tired she was. But a considerable amount of work had been done, and she was completely happy with it, except for this mysterious stash and the number written on it. To call? Well, just to see who would be on the other end of the line. She knew many of her husband's friends, but today it was too late. Tomorrow, she planned to get herself together. In the past 6 months, she had let herself go a lot. So, putting the money on the table, she went to the bathroom, thinking that there was nothing special about it. Tomorrow, she would call and find out everything. Yes, most likely, everything would be revealed very simply, and she would quickly forget about it. The next day, Lena visited a beauty salon, got a haircut, a manicure. She regretted not having time for the other procedures. She couldn't wait to call. Although, when she woke up, she wasn't sure if it was a good idea. But still, it's better to satisfy curiosity. Let there be no secrets between her and her late husband. Moreover, there probably aren't any. Everything will be revealed very simply, but some excitement still didn't leave her. Coming home, Lena took a deep breath and dialed the coveted number, turning on video communication. And here began what she did not expect, or hope to see someone else. A woman answered the phone. Not to say that she was a beauty quite ordinary. About the same age as Lena, of around 40. Besides, pregnant. Hello, we're not acquainted, but I need to fix that. My name is Lena. And you? And I'm Lily. But why do you want to get to know me? The interlocutor asked, surprised but without fear. She was quite pleasant, spoke in a friendly manner, but what could connect her with Steve? I would like to meet with you, talk in person, not over the phone. You understand? Don't worry, I don't wish you anything bad and won't cause any trouble, Lena assured. I don't even know. I'm pregnant, you see, and don't go anywhere. So, maybe you'll wait until the baby is born? Lily said with a smile. No, I'd prefer it sooner. I have some business, I won't say it's very serious, and not for long. But still. Moreover, after the baby is born, you'll be busy. Are you okay if I come over, just for a short time? Strangely enough, Lily agreed. She gave her address and said that she could be reached now. This stranger lived on the other side of the city, and during the long journey, Lena managed to get herself worked up to the fullest. She was already sure that she was going to meet her husband's lover. And apparently, they've been together for a long time, since she's quite pregnant. At least a year, maybe even longer. Yes, no wonder. Barren women are often abandoned, but why? Why didn't he tell me anything? Why did he seriously discuss adopting a child with me? Was he planning to leave me later with this adopted baby? Or was he planning to leave her with his child? Oh, Steve, Steve. I never would have believed that you were such a master of keeping secrets. And I never thought that you would cheat. Because in all these years, you never gave me a reason to doubt your faithfulness. And then suddenly some Lily. Oh, why am I going to her at all? What do I want to find out? Maybe it's better to remain in ignorance? Yes, even if I don't know, nothing can be changed. It will only torment the soul, not just mine, by the way. Tarnish the good name of my own husband? But she understood that ignorance, in her case, was not the best option. There would be no peace anyway. So, it's better to find out everything at once. And so, hesitating like this, she still arrived at the house of the unknown woman and rang the doorbell. Lily opened it, invited her without any fears, but Lena became more and more anxious. In the room, on the bookshelf, she saw a photograph of her husband, the same as at her home. Only without a mourning frame and a black ribbon. Maybe she doesn't know that he's dead. Poor thing. What serenity. Doesn't she care that her lover hasn't visited or called for 6 months? Or maybe she never really loved him. Maybe she doesn't want the baby, and she'll give it to me? Perhaps Steve got involved with her for that reason? Used her as a surrogate mother. Crazy thoughts raced through her mind. But still, to find out the truth, she needed to ask. But how? She decided to start from afar. Who is this? She asked Lily, pointing to the portrait. Your husband? No, Lily smiled. He's a friend of my husband, a very good person. He helped us with John and later, when I was alone and in a difficult situation. But it's been a while since we heard from him. He doesn't answer his phone. What did you want to talk about? I wanted to talk about him. Don't be upset, you shouldn't. Oh, why did I come at all? This is my husband, he's gone. 6 months ago, said Lena, tormenting herself with the bad news. And the news seemed to be really heavy. Lily gasped, covered her face with her hands, and burst into tears. I'm sorry, Lily, forgive me. Embracing her and crying too, exclaimed Lena. Oh, I shouldn't have come and talk about it. But it happened, women's curiosity and suspicion. And she told about what brought her to this house. About Steve's sudden death, about the found money, about the doubts about her husband's fidelity. And when I saw that you were expecting a baby, I made up a whole story. And now I see that I was wrong. I believe you. No, what are you saying, Lena? The baby is from my own husband. I had nothing with your Steve, and there could be nothing. But he was really a very good person. He helped both my John and me after what happened to John. Lily hopelessly waved her hand. It's a pity he's gone. I feel sorry for you. And what about your husband? Is it possible too? Gasped Lena. No, not at all. He's alive, just happened to be in jail. No, he's not a bandit, not a criminal. Just some unlucky guy. He stood up for a girl on the street, a very young one. 2 guys were bothering her. Well, he defended the girl, gave those scoundrels a good thrashing, and they turned out to be the sons of some bosses. John didn't do anything bad to them, just some bruises, broke the nose of one. Yes, he would have been enough for 15 days, or maybe even nothing at all for that. He's not guilty. These broken noses were considered especially serious. And they also remembered that he had a record for some nonsense in his youth. Oh, they took John, gave him the full sentence. I don't know what would have happened to me if it weren't for Steve. I have no relatives. My mom was sick for a long time. I took care of her, so I got married not very young, only after her death. But I decided to have a child with John. We really want kids. After crying her eyes out and talking about everything, they parted as friends. Lena decided that now she should help the person her husband had cared about. She no longer thought about the possibility of Steve having an affair with Lily. The woman was completely sincere with her, telling everything without hiding anything. She felt sorry for her, late, and also a difficult pregnancy. There is no husband nearby, no relatives, and even the only person she relied on died. How could Lena leave her like that? She gave her the money she found in her husband's desk, promised to visit, and asked her to call any time she needed help. Lily, don't hesitate, call me. I'll accompany you to the maternity hospital and meet you. And we'll buy everything the baby needs. I'm not rich, of course, but I won't leave you, don't doubt it. And I'll be like an aunt or godmother to your child for this. I don't have any of my own. Thank you, Lena. I'll try not to bother you too much, but it's so much easier now. Don't think I need the money. I just lack support. And now I think I'm not alone in the world. And your help will mean a lot to my child in case of anything, Lily thanked. Lena wasn't deceiving. She was genuinely glad about this acquaintance. And she was grateful to Steve for it. She felt that now she was not alone. She had loved ones who needed help. So, for whom she should live. She happily walked through baby stores, but didn't buy anything, remembering that it's not advisable to buy things for a baby in advance. It's a bad omen. However, she enjoyed looking at the delicate tiny clothes, toys, and other necessities for a newborn. How often she did that before, still hoping that she would become a mother. Now there was no hope, but still, even with someone else's child, she would have the opportunity to fuss. It was already known that Lily would have a boy, and Lily said they had decided to name him Robert with her husband. But unfortunately, their friendship was short-lived. One morning, Lily called Lena, and from her voice, it was clear that something was wrong. Lena, it's starting. The ambulance is on the way. They'll probably take me to the maternity hospital right away, she said through tears. Oh, dear, don't worry. Everything will be fine, you know that. I'm going to the maternity hospital right now. I'll be there, don't worry. and she quickly called a taxi, although she knew perfectly well that she couldn't help in any way. She wouldn't even be allowed into the delivery room. And even if they did, she couldn't do anything. But she would feel better knowing that Lily was already under the care of doctors. Both she and the baby would be fine. Although the birth of little Robert was expected only in 2 weeks. But maybe it wasn't so critical. However, a terrible surprise awaited her at the maternity hospital. "Are you a relative of the mother in labor?" they asked Lena sympathetically at the hospital information desk. "Yes, the only one." "What happened to her?" she asked anxiously. "The situation is very serious. Doctors are fighting for the lives of both the mother and the baby. But Lily couldn't be saved. The boy survived, his life and health were not in danger, but he became an orphan right after birth. What to do? Lena had to take care of the funeral and the baby. She couldn't prove her relation to Lily, of course there was none. But besides her, the deceased had no close relatives. And Lena started the process of guardianship. She informed John in prison about what had happened. She didn't know him at all, only through her friend's stories. Not only did he end up in prison for almost no reason, leaving his pregnant wife, but now, at such a moment, to learn about her death. She needed to instill in him the confidence that everything would be fine with his son. It was hard to imagine what would be on his mind after learning the terrible news of his wife's death. Well, at least Robert is fine. The boy was indeed healthy. Before Lena could complete all the paperwork, they left him in the maternity hospital under the supervision of doctors. Here she could breathe a small sigh of relief. Since she had already been preparing for the adoption of a child, she still had the documents, and she knew where and for what reason to apply. She hoped that everything would go well, and she would become the child's guardian, at least until the father's return. And then, who knows, maybe he will leave the boy to me, thought Lena with hope. Everything turned out badly for John. Learning about his wife's death, he was sure they would let him go for the funeral. After all, he didn't have much time left to serve, and the reason was more than respectful. But the head of the prison firmly said, "No, sorry, John. I can't let you go. Yes, the reason is significant, but you have a violation here, not only because of this. It's far to go, and you won't make it anyway, that's one. And two, I won't be driving a whole convoy just for you." Yes, they recently let one go for his father's funeral, but he lived nearby. Besides, they were taking two at the same time for a court hearing. That's the situation. And driving people halfway across the country because of one person? So, condolences, everything is like that. And for these days, so you won't be bothered, I can put you in a separate cell. Maybe even give you something to remember her by. But there's no way I can transport you back and forth. John understood that arguing in such a situation was pointless. But not attending his wife's funeral was something he couldn't accept. Taking advantage of the temporary relaxation in the regime, he decided to escape. Yes, he understood that he might not make it. He understood that they might catch him, and most likely, in that case, they would add more time. But sitting and not even trying to do something, he couldn't. He was worn down by the injustices of life that had been falling on him since childhood. So, even without much hope of success, he ran, and at first, it seemed like everything was going well. He managed to get outside the fence. Only the most dangerous place remained the field, where a person could be seen from all sides. A guard on a tower spotted the fugitive. He acted according to instructions, fired into the air, then aimed at the fugitive. He didn't think that they would catch this man anyway. The main thing for the young guard was to earn points with the higher-ups because capturing a runaway guaranteed a promotion and leave. Yes, he was lucky, but John was not. The bullet hit his spine. The guard received a well-deserved reward and went home happy, while John. They took him to the infirmary, then sent him to the hospital in the city. But even there, the doctors only saved his life, not his health. Nobody wanted to deal with a cripple who had nothing to look forward to except returning to prison. But even keeping him there didn't make sense. Who would take care of a non-walking invalid who required constant care? They didn't even bother to prosecute him for the escape attempt, so he didn't stay behind bars for long. John was released. In a wheelchair, he came home, hoping only to visit Lily's grave and bid her farewell. And, of course, to see his son. He had no other reason to live. He knew that Robert was now with some friend of his wife. He hoped that she was a kind woman who wouldn't mistreat his little one. For him, on the outside, it remained to clarify some things. For example, settle the matter with the apartment and settle scores with life. Why should he live after everything that happened? No relatives, no close ones. Only a son whom he hadn't seen, and who wasn't even a year old yet. Why would he be needed by the child? Only as a hindrance, a burden. Well, if he lived with a woman who cared for the baby and wouldn't abandon him. And John had no intention of imposing himself on anyone. Struggling to reach Lena's apartment, he called. When she opened the door, he introduced himself, realizing that a stranger had no reason to be pleased with his arrival. But she welcomed the guest warmly, introduced him to Robert, and seated him at the table. First, she talked about her son, how he was growing up, what the doctors said about his health and development. She showed him the room arranged for the little boy. She was afraid to touch on the main question. Lena, more than anyone, understood how painful this question would be for a man who had lost his love. But it was necessary to talk about it. Lily told me about you, but not much. Unfortunately, we met shortly before childbirth. Well, you understand? She was waiting for you. It's a pity that I didn't talk to her in more detail, but I didn't know. I thought there was still plenty of time ahead. After all, I wanted to be there, help her with the baby. I'm all alone after my husband's death. And he also died unexpectedly. I don't even know how you met him and why I didn't know anything about you. How did it happen? Well, it's very simple. We are brothers. He's older, I'm 2 years younger. But we got separated in childhood and found each other shortly before I got sentenced, John replied. How so? I was always sure that Steve had no relatives, and suddenly a brother? A real brother? Lena was surprised. Yes, real brothers. We didn't know our father, and as for our mother, well, she can't be called a model mother. When I was 5 and Steve was 7, she died. I don't know why, but we were too little to be explained to. And there were no other relatives, actually. So we clung to each other, understanding that we were the only family we had. They sent us to an orphanage. John fell silent, lost in thought. Apparently, he immersed himself in memories. I knew that Steve grew up in an orphanage, but he never talked about a brother. How did you two get separated? Were you adopted? My husband told me that he ran away from the orphanage more than once. But, in general, he didn't talk much about it. Apparently, he didn't want to reopen old wounds. After all, people don't run away from good places, do they? No, we weren't adopted. But we did decide to run away. That's how fate separated us. It was quite good there, not much better with a mother. But Steve and I wanted to go to the sea, dreamt about it. Shortly before her death, Mom suddenly started talking about going south soon. It's great there, warm, fruits grow right on the street, the man sadly smiled. Well, that's it. We didn't go with her, didn't have time. And having lived in the orphanage, Steve and I began to dream about going there together. It seemed pretty simple. If it's warm there, it means you don't need a home. And if fruits grow right on the street, it means you don't need money for food, as you pick and eat those fruits. And since we were still little, it wouldn't be difficult for us to go there. We'll just say we got lost. Like going home. So we stole some bread from the canteen to have something to chew on the way and went to the station. While I was having doubts there, which train goes south to the sea? Steve decided to go. Well, there should be a train departing. Steve got on it, and I stood there crying. It was scary to go, scary to stay, to fall behind my brother, and I got offended at him. While I stood there crying, the train left. I wandered around, hoping Steve would come back, but the police caught me. Because the orphanage had already reported missing kids. They brought me back. And they didn't find Steve? Oh, where would they find him? They questioned me, asking where my brother had gone. Well, what could I say? Got on the train. Which one? I don't know. Went to the sea, but which one? Well, what can a 6-year-old kid tell? That's how we got lost in this world. He later told me how he roamed the country, from train to train, from city to city. And he did reach the sea, then wanted to go back home, but didn't know how. In the end, he gave up, ended up in the first orphanage he came across. But far from our native lands and far from me. They didn't bother bringing him back. And then somehow we both forgot about it. No, I remembered that there was a brother somewhere, but I didn't know how to find him. So, you grew up in that first orphanage, didn't you? Lena sighed over the tragic fate of the brothers. Yes, I lived there. Finished school, went to a vocational school. Then, in my youth, I had a stint in prison, spent a year there for some stupidity. I lived my life gradually. Hoped to straighten out my destiny. Even got married. I thought a family would come out of it, but my first marriage was very unlucky. My wife refused to have children, then started going out and left. I thought maybe family life wasn't meant for me with my own people. Apparently, my fate is to be alone. And then, I met Lily. John lowered his head, lost in thought. Life has not spared you or Steve. We got married as adults too. We dreamed of having children, but it didn't work out. We wanted to adopt, but didn't get a chance. My Steve died. I knew very little about his past. Now I would ask, but there's no one to ask. Well, I can only envy him in the current situation. Look at what I'm left with, legs that can be cut off and thrown away. Don't worry, Lena, I won't burden you. I'll visit occasionally just to see Robert. Have you decided to keep him permanently? Of course. I love him as my own. But I don't plan to hide you from him. He should know his father's name. And what about you? Are you planning to live alone? Lena was surprised. Well, with whom? If, of course, I can manage to live at all. I'm not exactly a catch, as you can see. John didn't share all his plans with her, and he didn't really know what he would do next. Lena, it seems, understood. Well, why so gloomy? You have someone to live for. And you know what? Stay with us for now. We have enough space, and we won't be a hindrance to each other. And if anything, you can stay with my son. Besides, everything is easier together. Regarding your condition, you should apply for a pension now, then go to the doctors. They can treat a lot nowadays. Lena tried to cheer him up. They do treat, yes, but for money. And I, you see, don't have any and won't have any. Well, there are some quotas. We need to find out everything and deal with it together. That's why I'm saying to stay for now. And, by the way, you can find a job, any occupation. After all, your hands work normally. The guy didn't resist for long. He really didn't know how to live alone. And, honestly, he didn't want to part with his son. While they were talking to Lena, the boy was sleeping. When he woke up, he reached out to his father, apparently recognizing him. They started living together. Lena didn't deceive him. She enthusiastically began to inquire about the quota for John's surgery. But she was told that priority was given to children and able-bodied citizens of working age. What about your relative? Twice convicted, and the prospects for recovery are very doubtful, they explained to her. Well, how doubtful? The doctor said that everything is possible, just don't delay the surgery. Besides, he's a single father, he has a little son. So what? The father gets a pension, and the son is compensated for the loss of a mother. And you, the guardian. So, of course, we'll put him in line, but it's hard to promise anything. Wait, and if something, we'll inform you. Lena came home upset. But John met her with good news. He found a job, and a pretty good one. It happened completely by chance. He called a former comrade who knew him. The comrade worked in a car park and said that they needed drivers. I told you, my legs don't work. What kind of driver am I? And I haven't heard that they eagerly hired disabled people for work. John waved it off. Well, what's the big deal? You'll drive with a hand-operated car, it's a common thing. We also hire disabled people. One is even deaf-mute, he drives too. So don't hesitate, John, they'll take you. And they took John. He was a decent driver. Besides, as a taxi driver, he didn't need to use his legs. True, some colleagues occasionally expressed dissatisfaction. Ha, a legless guy, and a former convict to boot. What kind of worker can he be? This is our kindness, tolerance, or whatever it's called. They'll do him favors and give him better orders. This is not a doubt. And boasting, like, look how well we treat everyone. We hire disabled people and don't oppress them. The boss gets a plus, this wheelchair guy gets one too, of course. But we get an extra hassle. Some drivers grumbled among themselves. They were wrong, nobody gave him any special favors. John overheard his colleagues talking sometimes, though no one spoke directly to him. But you couldn't help but feel such an attitude. What could be done? He laughed, tried to work without any complaints, that's all he did. He needed to earn money to support his son and, perhaps, for the operation. Hopes of accumulating such a sum were non-existent. Just as the hope for that long-awaited turn for surgery. However, money was needed nonetheless. Lena was against selling the apartment they shared with Lily. No, it's not the right time to sell the property. I'm sure you'll recover, and what if you need your own place then? Robert will grow up, won't he need an apartment? We can rent it out for now, and that's still income. Use it for the operation. Also, don't give up hope on the quota. So they decided. They rented out the apartment, and John stayed to live with Lena and the little one. They lived harmoniously, and John tried not to show, but he couldn't deny to himself that he had developed feelings for this woman. Lena, on the other hand, wasn't thinking about love, she was simply happy. For the first time since her husband's death, she believed that she could live without being alone, not an unwanted widow quietly aging in solitude. Now she was a happy, family-oriented woman with a child who loved her as a mother. And with a man who wasn't her husband, but also needed her. In a burst of kindness, one day she couldn't resist and did something she had been thinking about for a while, but hadn't dared to do. She took in a large stray dog. Maybe it wasn't the most prudent move to bring a dog into an apartment where there's a small child and a disabled person. But Lena couldn't stand seeing an obviously intelligent, trained but discarded dog wandering the streets dirty and hungry. She occasionally fed him, and he seemed to recognize her as his owner. How could she abandon him? She brought him home, cleaned him up, took him to the vet for examination and necessary vaccinations. That's how Rex became a part of their family, a loyal guardian and protector. John, too, grew fond of the dog, even though he teased Lena about her sudden desire to make everyone happy. If you're not busy enough with Robert and me, now there's also the dog. This Rex demands attention and everything else. How do you not get tired of all this? He wondered. I'm sure he's not superfluous in our home. No one appears in anyone's life for no reason. Apparently, we were meant to have a dog, she could only respond. John didn't argue. Rex was indeed not superfluous in their lives. He gave them a sense of security about the future. However, John had an encounter with something unpleasant, if not dangerous. It was a typical situation for any taxi driver, given the variety of people they have to transport. Everyone has stories of dealing with scammers, and unfortunately, taxi drivers often become victims of robbery attempts or get involved in criminal activities. One day, two strangers got into John's car who immediately made him uneasy. They were nervous, twitchy, and didn't specify their destination. They just asked him to drive fast, and they would tell him where to drop them off later. John didn't know how to get rid of such passengers, but things took care of themselves. The men suddenly jumped out of the car upon seeing a police car ahead. John sighed in relief, thinking he got rid of them. However, he found a bag they had forgotten on the back seat. Opening it, he discovered stacks of money. It was serious. He had probably unwittingly transported criminals who had committed a robbery. It would be naive to think they simply forgot about their loot. Most likely, they would try to find him and retrieve the money. But the sum was substantial, enough for the surgery and subsequent recovery, which happened to be John's main dream. The temptation was significant. Unable to decide what to do, he brought the bag home to consult with Lena. Seeing the money, she got scared. This is a lot. No, John, don't consider them yours. They were probably criminals, and they'll come looking for it. You won't be able to escape them later. I don't even know what's better, report it to the police or wait for these scoundrels to come and take the money. I don't know either. With my history, I don't expect anything good from the police. But dealing with criminals isn't appealing either. Okay, let's wait. Perhaps tomorrow we'll come up with something. However, they didn't have to wait until morning. The criminals remembered the driver and the car's license plate, and finding John was no trouble. Lena and John were preparing to sleep when a demanding knock came at the door. Is it them? Lena guessed. I'll call the police, and you open. Try to keep them engaged in conversation. Lena went into the room, and John, in his wheelchair, approached the door and opened it. Yes, on the doorstep stood those same passengers, and their expressions did not promise anything good. Oh, and he's crippled too, one of them disdainfully remarked. Well, Uncle, are you planning to return the forgotten things from the car, or will you whistle to the lost and found office? You mean the bag left in the car? I may not be trained to whistle, but I did return it as required. So, you've come to the wrong person. Contact the taxi company. Maybe they'll return it if you can prove it's yours, he firmly replied. You're smooth talking, he returned it. One of the bandits sneered. We'll see about that. All right, show us. We know for sure it's hidden somewhere around here. The thugs turned the wheelchair, boldly entering the apartment. Quiet, you, the kid is sleeping in there, John said. Well, then, feel sorry for your boy. Just give everything back, or we'll have to turn this place upside down. You think we want to dig through this mess? But we're not used to losing what's ours. We're more about taking what belongs to others. So, man, I wouldn't advise resisting, or you might end up without hands. Understanding that the situation was taking a serious turn, John was about to shout for Lena to give the damn bag to the bandits. But the situation unexpectedly changed. From the corner of the hallway, Rex, who had been ignored until then, leaped like a black lightning. The dog had been observing the guests and, realizing that his owner was in danger, rushed at the enemies, clamping strong jaws on one of them. There was a scream. Chaos ensued. Lena rushed out of the room, alerting everyone that the police were on their way. The awakened Robert started crying. Fortunately, the law enforcement officers didn't keep them waiting. They had already been alerted about the robbery at the private currency exchange office and were looking for the criminals. The thugs were apprehended. John handed over the bag. Lena cried over Rex, who had been wounded by the bandits. After all the formalities were observed, the police left. John comforted his son, and Lena called for emergency veterinary help. She was very concerned about Rex. Fortunately, as it turned out, the dog's life was not in danger, and after receiving a bandage, the veterinarians left. Trying to calm down after the incident, John and Lena sat in the kitchen to have some tea. Oh, John, you should quit this job. It brings not so much money as it does trouble. Now, with what feelings am I supposed to see you off and wait for you later, she said. John couldn't agree with that. No, without work, it's not good either. What about my pension and the money from renting the apartment? After all, I still hope to save up for the surgery. It seems I won't be getting the quota anytime soon. And about the dangers? Yes, they don't happen that often. Well, it happened to me once, so I've already exhausted my limit of troubles. Agree. Oh, if only you were joking, sighed Lena, not agreeing with this optimistic statement. And it turned out that the story with the stolen money had a continuation. During the investigation, John learned about the owner of the robbed currency exchange office, Mr. Cage. He was an elderly, imposing man. He was very impressed by the disabled man's act, not appropriating the money and, without fear of the bandits, ensuring that the entire sum was returned to the owner. He sincerely thanked John, but he had no intention of hiding or attributing non-existent merits to himself. Well, come on, why are you making such a fuss? I'm no hero. At first, I thought of keeping it all, but, for the right cause. I need the surgery, and it's not cheap. So, Lena guided me on the right path, and my dog Rex became a defender. He suffered the most, still getting bandages, John explained. Mr. Cage, however, came to visit John and Lena not so much to meet the whole family as to make an offer they couldn't refuse. Sitting at the table with the hosts, he said, I am, you see, a completely lonely person. That's just how it turned out. And not only that, I recently learned that I don't have much time left to live. No, it's true. Oncology, the final stage, no chances. No treatment in this condition will help, it'll only prolong the agony, and that's not what I want. If it's destined, then sooner is better. Yes, what am I talking about? I decided to give John money for the operation and put him in a good clinic where they will surely help. You, John, are still young to live and live. Besides, you have a son, and he needs a father, the man reflected, lowering his head. I had two of them, sons, I mean. Or I would have, but I didn't notice them due to my business. And I ended up alone. So, here, I'll help you. It's like redemption of sins, perhaps. John and Lena couldn't believe their luck. Was this really happening? It turned out to be true. Mr. Cage had no intention of joking about such an important matter and soon began to implement his plan. John was admitted to the hospital and treatment began. The elderly man who organized everything remained constantly informed and stayed in touch with Lena, letting her know how everything was progressing. She didn't have much time to go to the hospital. She had a child to take care of, and she understood that a lonely, elderly, and fatally ill person simply lacked companionship. She started inviting him to her home, just to talk, to be in a calm family atmosphere. Mr. Cage didn't object. On the contrary, he was grateful for it. He truly lacked a family. From his rather brief stories, she already knew that he had no personal life for a long time. Yes, as they say, I always bet on the wrong horse. I saw the purpose of my life in earning money, developing a business. Well, it seemed like I succeeded, and only then did I think, what's it all for? Turns out, I don't need anything, not money, nothing. Nothing can help with this damn loneliness, he sadly admitted. And have you never been married? Lena asked. Well, how can I put it? It seemed like I was about to get married, but it turned out, again, not to the right one, and, in general, it led to nothing. Many years ago, I married a girl from a not-so-simple, very influential family. Well, what could go wrong? But everything did. Her parents married her off to me to straighten her out because their daughter had gone astray. But I also thought everything would be fine. We got married, she gave birth to a son, but immediately handed him over to a nanny. She didn't need a child. It seemed like she even scorned him. And then, life completely fell apart. Her dad got sentenced with confiscation of property, her mother died, and my wife was left with nothing, pregnant. I thought we would live together, but no. She was used to another life, she didn't need it. I became the main obstacle, my little son. She gave birth to another and ran away with both kids, somewhere with someone. So, initially, I felt relieved. Living with her was very difficult. But then I realized, what about the kids? But I couldn't find her anymore. She left one, attached herself to another. I only found her after 3 years, but it was too late. She was completely down and out by then. And the children? Lena asked. They died. She said they perished. Started weaving some story about an accident she was involved in and, of course, asked for money. In short, that was the end of it. I didn't try to organize my life anymore. There were, of course, some meetings, but in every woman I saw only greed and deceit. Maybe I was wrong, yes. But it's too late to talk about it now. So, I lived a recluse, and until recently, everything suited me, and now this. What a horror! It's even strange that all of us, you, me, my husband John, have lives full of such complex tragic events. I mean, Steve and I lived well, but there were no children. Then he died, unexpectedly and tragically, a car accident. But his childhood was not sweet either. They are brothers with John. They grew up in orphanages, just different ones. But wait, Steve and John. But my children were also named like that. Do you know anything, Lena? Mr. Cage suddenly became worried. I don't know anything. Yes, they themselves knew very little. They were named Sarah, and she, it seems, died. But do you think they could be? But such coincidences don't happen. Exactly, they don't happen. Names, destinies, everything matches. Well, at least something from my husband's past remains? Documents, photos? It's all very important. I'll try to find it now, but I don't know if it will work, she said, feeling how important all this was for Mr. Cage. There was very little left, of course. Even the birth certificate was lost. But miraculously, a photo of Steve and John's mother was preserved. And of course, in the woman depicted in it, Mr. Cage recognized his ex-wife, Sarah. It's unbelievable. I mourned my children for so many years, and they are alive. Oh, not all of them. Why? Why did she lie to me? How did she manage to say such things about her own sons? The elderly man couldn't understand, clutching his head. And what now? One is gone already, the other survived so much that it's unimaginable. Ah, all this because of the whim of her own mother. I would never have left them. Calm down, Mr. Cage, Lena embraced him. But you found not only a son but also a grandson. Moreover, you helped your son so much. Thanks to you, he will soon return home on his own two legs. You should be happy. And John will be so glad. After all, he probably thought all his life that you abandoned him. Yes, if only he knew that you were alive. Oh, if only I knew that they were alive. Ah! Mr. Cage couldn't calm down. The next day, everyone, together with Robert, whom his grandfather now didn't let out of his sight, went to the hospital to see John. The surgery performed on him was successful. He couldn't stand up yet, but things were moving in that direction. Sensitivity returned to his legs, and he could move them. The news that the operation was paid for not by just anyone but by his biological father stunned him. He was overjoyed. He said he never blamed his orphanhood. I don't even hold a grudge against my mother. You never know how things turn out in life, John said. Now we'll never know what motivated her. I think she paid for everything herself. It's a pity, of course, she could have been living well until now. But what can you do about it? Absolutely. Now she faces another court. And now, John, you must recover, without a doubt. You understand what it's like for a son to live without a father. Oh, wait a minute. Something came to my mind. What does this mean? Do I no longer have to die? Are you still doubting? Absolutely not, exclaimed Lena. Your grandson is growing up. He must know his roots. Well, for the sake of this young man, I'll live a little longer, if you insist. Promised the grandfather. Doctors told me there are some new methods that can be tried. I didn't believe it. But now I have to. Yes, father, getting treatment is a tough thing. There's no other way. I'm trying too, for someone's sake. Yes, and I still want to see for myself what life has in store, John laughed. After some time, he returned home, not quite on his own feet, using crutches. But still, not in a wheelchair, which he had thought he would never return to. He continued his recovery and was confident that he would be able to go fishing and play football with his son. And we'll take Grandpa with us. Right, Robert? He asked his son, and he agreed completely. Mr. Cage seriously took care of his health. He promised that he would definitely wait, if not for Robert's wedding, then at least for the marriage of Lena and John. They would definitely celebrate. When are you planning, lovebirds? he teased. It's clear that you love each other. What's the holdup? You already have a family, your son will soon go to kindergarten, and you still act like strangers to each other. We are not strangers at all, quite the opposite. And as for the weddings soon, Dad, soon, John said seriously. As soon as I realize that I can go to the registry office without crutches, immediately. And what's the rush? People might think we have some calculated marriage, a beauty marrying a crippled guy. And it happened 8 months later. John did manage to walk without any external assistance. He and Lena got married. Mr. Cage spared no expense for the wedding, although the young couple wanted a much quieter celebration. Kids, have some conscience. He reproached them. This will be my first time attending my son's wedding. Why be modest? Everything must be top-notch so that they remember it for a long time. And so it turned out. The wedding was luxurious, albeit not very crowded, as the newlyweds had no relatives. But there were friends and faithful wrecks.